2004 to 2008 F-150s can be very capable off-road, but not so much in their stock form. So Zone helped us out by hooking up our project truck with a 4-inch lift kit to make our F-150 a true off-road machine. To start this long install, jack up the truck and remove the wheels. We then remove the front calipers to start disassembly on the front suspension. After the caliper is tied up and out of the way, we remove the rotor. Now disconnect all of the brake accessories that connect to the brake hub, including the ABS and vacuum lines. We then moved on to the sway bar. It is easily removed by unbolting it from the stem mounts in the lower control arm and the mounts to the frame. Preparing to remove the front axle shafts, we took the dust cover off the center hub and removed the axle shaft nut. Next, we attacked the front spindle assembly by removing the top, middle, and bottom 3 bolts that hold it in place. It took a little bit of persuasion to break the front knuckles loose. Now the front knuckle can be removed. The lower control arms are the next piece of the puzzle to deal with. 2 bolts attach them to the frame of the truck. After the LCAs were out, we moved on to the rear crossmember, which is held on by 2 bolts on each side. The next job is to tackle the front struts, which are already halfway removed. Just unbolt it from the top and remove it out of the wheel well. We then began unbolting the nuts that hold the front axle shafts to the front differential. Next up is the front drive shaft bolts, followed by the front differential mounts. After the front differential was out, we transferred the bearing and hub assemblies from our stock knuckles over to Zone's lifted knuckles. After everything was transferred, we marked up the rear crossmember mounts for cutting as per Zone's instructions. Then we broke out the sawzall and began cutting. Now that the rear crossmember mounts were ready, we installed the new rear crossmember along with the new sway bar drop mounts. Then we drilled a hole for the second mounting stud for the driver's side of the differential. Next up are the differential drop brackets that install in the factory differential mounts. Then the differential can be reinstalled, followed by the front drop bracket that installs in the factory mounts. Also, the front drive shaft can be reattached to the front differential. Once the front bracket is mounted, the new breather extension line can be added. After the new front spacers are added to the factory struts, reassembly of the front suspension can begin. Start with bolting the top of the struts down, then the front spindles, followed by the lower control arms. Now came time in our install to wrestle back in the knuckle bearing assembly along with the front axle. Then we removed the old brake lines from the truck and caliper and replaced them with the new supplied stainless steel brake lines. This does mean that we have to bleed our front brakes after we are finished installing the new lines and reattaching the caliper to the rotor. Once they are in, we decided to bolt up the differential skid plate. Moving on, the sway bar can now be installed to the stem mounts and the new drop brackets. We then reconnected the ABS sensors and vacuum lines to the hub and tightened everything down. With the front lift finished, we moved our way to the back of the truck to tackle the rear lift. The new brake line drop brackets can be installed. Following the brake lines, we went after installing the new shocks by simply unbolting the top and bottom bolts and removing the old units. Install the new zone shocks in their place. Now to address the rear blocks. The 4 nuts can be removed from the stock U-bolts so that the rear axle can be lowered to add the extra rear block. Then the new longer U-bolts can be dropped in and bolted down. Now that our install is complete, we threw on a new set of bigger wheels and tires to top off our new look. Overall, our truck now has a major off-road and visual upgrade from stock, and we couldn't be happier with the look. Some last words to say about the install. Make sure all of the nuts and bolts are tightened to correct spec. This is a major installation and you don't want to take the chance of something coming loose. Check out our more in-depth install guide on our blog at stage3motorsports.com.